Hey everybody, how we doing? I got caught up in the countdown. That was pretty cool. That's really the best part of the show. So thanks for coming. Welcome to the weekly show with Jimmy and Joe. That sounds weird to even say out loud. I honestly, Jimmy, before we even get started with this thing, we need to change the name. So here's the reason we need to change the name. We've been talking about this thing for months, right? Like trying to find a day that we could do this. And now we're going to do it weekly. Are you out of your mind? Like maybe we got to go to Sunday or something like that, because this is like, we've been trying, like what Sunday would work. What's that? Like now we're going to do it weekly. Come on, man. Like what's going on? Are you serious?
Maybe we should change it to the random show. That's what it should be. The random show, whenever it happens. So, hey, I see Amy Perez is in the house this morning. So I see we got quite a few people joining us. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing your name, your title, or your role, and where you're coming at us this morning. We would love to hear from you. So, Joe, what's up with the gear this morning? What's up with the stocking cap? I mean, I know you live in Wisconsin, but come on.
Listen, man. We are this Fall Creek School District's fantastic. We're saving money. Jimmy, we're saving money. It's Sunday and it's 61.3 degrees in this office right now. We're saving money. We are saving the taxpayer money. That's what we're doing. So if that means leadership. That I got to put a hat on,
no, that is leadership right there. That is leadership.
I didn't make that decision, so it works out all right. That's fantastic. But I am so excited to do this. We have been talking about this for a long time and just thinking about how we can kind of think about leadership a little bit differently. And can we put something together that's a little bit different than everything else that's out there? And I don't know if that's what this is going to be. I have no idea. The best part is this show could be done by 9:32 Central, and we're like, yeah, we're done. We got nothing else. This was a great time. So, but at the same time, look at AJ.
I was feeling pretty good until I just saw my son popped on here. So now I want to get off. This is not going to be good.
you got half your stories are gone now. He's gonna be like, yeah, that's not even true. So but I don't know where this is gonna go, but we just kept thinking to ourselves, like, there's got to be a better way to crowdsource some of these great ideas in terms of the work that's happening, and how can we bring people in and just kind of talk about what's going on and try to help. Because when it comes down to it, this is really, really difficult. Leadership generally is difficult. But leadership in a time where you don't always have the right answer is really, really difficult, especially when things change on a regular basis. So we thought maybe there was an opportunity to kind of bring people together. It looks like people are coming in from all over the country. And I saw Hawaii on there. I saw Northwest Indiana. I saw Texas. Oh my goodness, Pennsylvania. I mean, this is fantastic, Jimmy. Fantastic. Now we got to think about what we're going to say.
That's right. Holy cow. What we're going to talk about, right? That's exactly right. So, Joe,
go ahead.
No, it's just so funny because just the first comment you shared. So, as people are joining us here this morning, here's one thing that Joe and I want to really express, and that is, if you are interested in joining us in the studio this morning, and you do respond or share a comment in the box, this idea here is to learn from one another, to continue to crowdsource great ideas. But if you want to jump in with us when you respond or share a comment or reflection, just put in after there yes or no, and that'll let us know that you want to jump into the studio with us. You do have the option of jumping in with just audio only or audio and picture. And so we want to be respectful of that. So just let us know in there, yes, audio or both, or whatever you want to do, that'll be fine. So, but we're hoping we get a couple of people join us this morning just to talk about leadership always, because we know it's always about leadership. So, Joe, here's one thing I had in my mind this morning, and I was thinking just about why people are so exhausted right now, right? And I keep going back to, when the pandemic first hit, I do believe that people immediately recognize that we're concerned about our kids. I mean, I think that's exactly where it always begins, right? How are we going to continue to ensure that our kids feel safe, that they are not nervous, that they don't have anxiety, that they're not worried, that they're watching the adults, right? And that they're looking at the adults and watching what the adults do. And that then sets the tone for how the children are going to respond. Well, then eventually what happens, and we know this, is that our teachers, right, because they're so invested, they care so much, they start doing everything they can to take care of their kids, right? Why? Because they just care so darn much.
Absolutely.
And then in the meantime, what happens is they're doing that. One of the things none of us could have predicted is how long this would continue. And what happened is that our teachers couldn't sustain that. And then what I believe happened is then our administrators, right, in our buildings and our campus leaders started recognizing, oh my God, Now our teachers are exhausted and they're tired. And so then I think our administrators try to do as much as they could to sustain, went above and beyond to support teachers, and started doing things that are above and beyond typically what would be in the normal routine of a daily, of a day of an administrator. My concern is now well, who's taking care of our administrators? Who's taking care of us? And I think that's where I'd like to begin maybe the conversation, Joe, this morning, if our audience would help us, is when we begin to look at the leadership in the building. I think one of the reasons we are exhausted is because we are doing so much. So the question then becomes this: how do we then build the capacity? How do we build a community of leaders to help us lead the organizations? And Joe, we talk about this all the time, right? That leadership cannot be a committee of one.
Right.
That yes, we have to lead from where we are, right? But how do we invite? How do we encourage? And more importantly, how do we inspire other people to lead with us? Joe, can you talk a little bit about how you do that in your current situation? And then if the audience would chime in and share some ways they're doing that. And then if someone has a really good practical way or some things that they're doing in terms of how they're building that community of leaders, would love to have you come in and share that with our audience this morning.
So a couple of things that kind of resonated with me when you were talking is like our leaders are in charge. So we're in charge of taking care of the adults who are taking care of the kids, right? Who's taking care of the adults who are taking care of the adults who are taking care of the kids? What are we doing to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity to kind of really lean into each other? Because if we don't, we're just like, we're trying to figure out where we're going to go. And we're so set up right now. We're so set up right now to be reactionary because we don't know what the answer is in terms of the work that's happening, right? Think about how many leaders across the country in schools right now are spending their time, contact tracing and making sure that the protocols are set up. And that's a piece of management that needs to be done. But then that also takes away from the opportunity to really get in and dive deep into the work that people are doing. And I think that really gets to the core of how people are feeling right now, because they want to do that work. Like, they signed up for the work to try to lead groups. And we have to understand that sometimes signing up to do the work of leading groups means you got to do stuff that wasn't on the paper. You signed up to do that work, right? And so how do we know, how can we get, one of the things that you say often, Jimmy, that I think is really good is like, leadership is a lot easier when you know the answer. Leadership is really difficult when you don't know the answer. So how do we make sure that we put ourselves in a position so we can build people around us, so it's not just us in that spot? Because here's what ends up happening. This job because a lot of times, if you're thinking about district leadership, you're talking about building leadership, you might be the only person in your building with your particular job. And if that's the case, then all of a sudden that ends up that gets really isolating, then it gets really lonely, then it gets really depressing. And then you start wondering if you have any value because you can't see the immediate reaction to what happens within the context of that space. So I think one of the things that's really important about building capacity to lead is giving people opportunity to lead, and supporting that process, but also making sure that, they're able to make their own decisions, and we're not micromanaging what that really looks like, even if we would have done it differently, right? Like, from a district perspective, I could probably say, well, this is what I want it to look like. This is what I want it to look like. But if that's what Joe wants it to look like, and then I try to push that off onto one of our administrators to make sure that that's what it looks like, then they don't own the process. And then all of a sudden, then you're stuck. But then guess what happens? If you do that as a district leader, guess what they're going to do as a building leader? They're going to do the same thing with teachers, right? Because that's what's being modeled to them. So how can we make sure that we put ourselves in a spot that actually, grows the capacity to lead by giving them the opportunity to lead? If we're not going to give people the opportunity to lead, then what are we really doing here? We're trying to create more leaders in this spot. And in doing that, what ends up happening is that we find ourselves, actually kind of feeling more invested in the work because we're not the only one doing the work. So I think that's the biggest thing, is to give them opportunity. And one of the things that drives me nuts, is that when leaders say, well, I'm going to hire the right people and then get out of the way. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's ridiculous. Don't do that. Like, that's not what you want to do. You're not there to get out of the way. You're there to get in and help. If I hire a great person, I've hired great people here, right? I've hired great administrators here. I don't want to just get out of the way. I want to make sure that I'm there not only to help them, but I want to see them do the great work because I hired them. Like, that's what I want. I want to see them succeed. So building more capacity is really kind of taking the celebration that they do on a regular basis and investing in them, but also allowing them to lead and supporting their decisions and asking great questions. So it's not, well, Joe said, well, Joe said, well, Joe said, well, Joe said.
Mm-hmm. You know, Joe, there were so many things you said in there that we could go 100 different directions with that, right? And I'm looking at the comments, and one of the comments I think is a legitimate concern is that I think the reason some leaders hesitate in building capacity is because now they're concerned that they don't want to give teachers one more thing to do, right?
Yeah.
We're asking them to come to one more meeting or to be a part of or do more, right? But I still think, here's what I'm thinking about when we begin to look at things like this. I still always go back to the why. Not the why like Simon Sinek why, right? Because, well, I don't want to even have a conversation about why people go into the profession, right? Because I think Simon Sinek has that all wrapped up, right? And I'm not going to try to compare that conversation.
That's not what we're here for.
Move there, right? I mean, but it makes me think about two other whys, right? And because we're talking about culture and we're talking about leadership. And in leadership, when we begin to examine our culture, I do think it comes down to the way people behave in the organization. So two different whys maybe to think about it is, number one is, why do people behave the way they behave? That's the first question or first why. And then the second why that comes to my mind is, well, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And it goes back to the comment about, well, we don't want to ask teachers to take on leadership roles because they're already exhausted. But I'm not sure we should make that assumption. And so then I begin to think about leadership in general, because the truth of it is, Joe, and we've also talked about this a lot, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to any higher institution, but it is really hard to simulate what school leaders are going to experience once they go into the role of school leadership, right?
Right.
I tell people all the time,
it's impossible.
What's the most difficult part about the job? Well, I'll tell you what it was. I could have never predicted the emotional toll that the principalship was going to take on my health, right? My family, just what it does to us, right? It just eats at us inside. And for so many reasons, because we want to fix everything. We want to solve every problem. We feel responsible for everybody. We're trying to be servant leaders. And so we create this idea of what leadership should look like. And I still believe that, I know for me personally, when I first became a principal at a very young age, I did think I could do it all by myself.
Yeah.
And I tried to do it all by myself. And that's not healthy and that doesn't sustain. So when I go back to the idea of the why, I think of, well, maybe rather than make assumptions that teachers, and I understand why we're doing it because we want to be careful, but why don't we just ask them? So in other words, how do we create a culture where we can actually have conversation with staff and say, hey, listen, if we were to do this, what would that look like? And who would be willing to be a part of that? But remind them that we're not asking you to do anything alone. It's the idea of bringing a group of people together, right? Because I still believe that whatever changes that we make in our organization, at the end of the day, we're responsible for that. No one's going to come in from the outside and do the work for us, right? So we're going to have to do this work within the buildings. But strategically, how do we come together to share that whole idea of collective efficacy, right? And because at the end of the day, I still think that if we don't think that things can be better, if we don't think that we can get through this pandemic, if we don't think that anything's ever going to be better, well, then what the hell are we all doing here, right? Why are you here? Why am I here? Why are these people here? So I still believe hope and faith play a big part of that, because part of it's the mindset of believing that we can still make that impact, still make that difference. But it's getting past the idea of having to do it by ourselves. The profession has always been isolating. So can we be more intentional in inviting people, like I said, encouraging, inspiring people to lead with us? But I think we have to be strategic sometimes. And I think we have to be very, communication plays a big part in that. But how do we bring people together and be very clear what this is going to look like, put that plan into place? And as we always say, use the four most powerful words in leadership, right, Joe? I need your help.
I need your help, yeah.
Right.
So the other piece that I think is, and everything you said is spot on, totally spot on. And I believe that the question becomes, how do we do that, right? Like, what logistically does that look like, right? So, I think about what it looks like here and how we can lead in a different capacity. And if we're going to ask people to do things, do we give them the time to do those things? Do we give them the resources to do those things? And we give them the opportunity to connect with people so they can do them together. time, resource, opportunity. And I was in the same situation that you were, you know, as a young principal, thinking that I had all the answers when I had zero, right? And so I would end up being, you know, fix it, fix it, fix it, fix it. And I actually, when we started this process, I became more of a help desk than I did a leader, right? Because I was just fixing problems. And guess what happened when I was fixing problems? The first thing that would happen is that the people that just wanted their problem fixed and wanted me to do it, not have to deal with it, were calling all the time. But guess who stopped calling? The people who just wanted some help, right? That wanted to learn and grow. They stopped calling because they're like, well, he's just going to fix it anyway. So what's the point, right? So how can we invest in that conversation and give people time, resource, and opportunity to grow? But also model what it looks like to take care of yourself across the board too. Like, what are we doing to take care of, you know, I mean, one of the things that's important is like, if we're asking people, if we're having that conversation that you're saying, if you're having that conversation that says, you know, how do you want to help? Do you want to be part of this? Are we also doing the whole thing about, you know, how are we getting away from it sometimes too? If we're overtaxed as organizations, which we are, and we're leading what that looks like, are we also modeling what it means to take a step back from that, right? You know, when we go on a long weekend, we'll send an email to our staff members saying, you're not going to hear from an administrator all weekend. Like, don't check your email, right? You're not going to hear from us. But the counterpoint to that is, if they email the administrator, you know, we got to take a step back too and not respond. Right? I mean, we got to model what it looks like to break away from this spot sometimes. Otherwise, we just keep getting in, you know, just deeper into it. And if you're always cycling, you never get a chance to actually be your best self because you're always cycling through it. So I think that's a big piece of two pieces that I would really hope that people would understand is that, you know, we want people to invest in the work that we're all doing as a group. Are we giving them time, resource, and opportunity to do that? But the second piece is, are we modeling what it looks like not only to be involved in that, but to also step away from that? Because if we're not doing that, then people are just going to cycle out, you know, and just going to get worse all the time.
That's a great point. Hey, Joe, I just saw that Jay Anderson was commenting in here.
Oh, yeah.
And Jay is an administrator down in Missouri, and I had an opportunity just to see him just last week down in Florida, Fort Myers, Florida. By the way, that sucked because it was like 40 freaking degrees down there. What's up with that? But anyway, Jay Anderson, hey, if you're interested, you made a comment in there. My question is, would you want to join us in the studio here this morning? Can you leave a post in the comment if you're interested in doing that? And we'll have you brought right into the studio and just maybe share some of your thoughts on what Joe and I have been talking about this morning here, and why you're deciding whether you want to do that or not, buddy.
Jay's fantastic. He's fantastic.
Yeah,
I work in the school district as well. He's a fantastic guy.
Jay, you're interested in jumping in? All right, why don't we bring you in right now, Jay? So we'll drop the link in the comment box here, Jay. When you see that link, just click on that link, and then you'll jump in, and then we'll let you in here. We'll join you there, buddy, okay? Or you can have the conversation. While we're waiting for Jay, Joe, you said something there that I was thinking about, right? So let me share. You know,
that's good. I was hoping that I could say something that you're thinking about. We've been on for 20 minutes. At least I can give you one thing to think about, Jimmy.
There you go, buddy. You got me many things to think about. But it made me reflect on something, because here's the truth of the matter, right? We all know this. There's so many things, I would say, right? I know for myself, I'll speak for myself here, that, man, I wish I want to go back and just do things differently, right? There's so many times that I think, God, if I went back into the profession right now building leadership, how much better I would be, right? And it just goes, again, it's just that constant experiences that we have, our takeaways, our reflection. What are we going to do to be different? How are we going to become a better version of ourselves? And, you know, I want to go back and be that 26-year-old principal again. I want to do it differently. So, but anyway, my point is that one of the mistakes I made, Joe, that I don't know if other people have made this, but, you know, especially my last principalship, because, you know, I had 4 assistant principals. And I can't tell you how many times on a Friday night, Joe, because you know how this is. You're waiting for the events to start. So you're doing a bazillion emails after school all the way up. You know, I had 4 at 7 o'clock. And I can't tell you weekend, right? Friday night, Joe, because you know how this is. You're waiting for the events to start.
Make sure Jay's muted.
All right, thanks. Okay. And then Saturday morning, that's my time to work to catch up from the week, right? So then I go in Saturday morning. I am blasting out a bazillion emails. And then I'm thinking, well, hell, Sunday morning, I'm going to keep working. I got to get some stuff done. And by the time you know it, I'm sitting there sending mixed messages because I'm saying to my APs, take the weekend off, spend time with your family, don't work. And And they're like, Jimmy, we would if you quit sending so many freaking emails all weekend long. And for some of them, they felt like, and I remember one of my APs saying, Jimmy, I'm just gonna be really honest. I don't think I can ever keep up with you.
Yeah.
And I always feel inadequate because I feel like you're always so far ahead of me. And it was a reminder, right, to slow down. And my poor secretary didn't want to start her Monday morning every week, right, with 30 or 40 emails is the first thing she has to answer when she walks into work on Monday morning. So just your comment about the emails, because that's the thing that constantly is overwhelming us, right? We talk about how we hate emails, but then we just keep sending more emails and we forget every time we send an email, we're just getting 2 or 3 back. So anyway, it was just something I was thinking about when you said that, because I still can remember that conversation. Jimmy, quit sending so many freaking emails.
Right. It's time too, Jimmy. It's the time that you do it. I used to I'd be brushing my teeth, checking my email or checking my text, and I'd send a bunch of texts right before bed because I'm like, I'm just going to get this off my chest. Like, I'm just going to get off my chest. Well, what am I doing? I'm still thinking about when I go to bed, but I've just put it squarely on the chest of somebody else right before they go to bed. Yeah. Like, what do we really do? And I did it without even thinking, because I thought, oh, they're going to want to know this. They're going to want to know this, right? If we're going to model what it means to break away from this place, you better break away from this place.
That's right. Jay Anderson.
Where'd he go?
Man, Jay Anderson. He's in there. He's coming back. He's in there. Okay. Oh, it says device not connected.
Okay.
See, we kept talking, Joe, and poor Jay just said, well, screw this. I thought you wanted me on the
I'm studio. Out. That's right. That's right. So we got to be out. We got to make sure that we don't do that anymore, because he's got great things to share. So hopefully, hopefully we can kind of move ourselves forward. But the more that we can do to model what it looks like to not only be present and engaged for the people that we serve at school, but also be able to do that when we get out, then I think that's going to be, obviously a better opportunity for people around. So the more that we can do that, the better. And that honestly comes down to, are we modeling whether or not that's really working or not? So I'm just hoping that we can put ourselves in that situation to do that. We'll get Jay back here, and he said he lost his connection. We'll get it back real quick and get him on here and have that conversation.
Hey, while we're waiting, the people out there, if there are problems of practice, something right now that you want to talk about, or you say, hey, here's a topic, why don't you shoot it in the comment box here? We'll take a look at it, and we'll invite somebody else in the studio after Jay here if we can get Jay reconnected here. So Kevin Carroll, oh my God, Kevin Carroll's in the house. Welcome, Kevin.
You, Kevin.
Hello. Jennifer Bloom, good morning. How you doing, girl? Good to see you out here. Good to see so many people join us. Thank you so much. We're just waiting for Jay Anderson, but we know he's having some difficulties here. But in the meantime, Joe, Lambeau Field. I feel like we have to do something about Lambeau Field, the magic of Lambeau Field. I was just up there, right? I was just.
I don't want to talk about it.
I know, but I was just up there. It was so beautiful. I had no idea. I haven't been up there for 20 years, and wow, it's crazy, right? But so now we got the Bengals and we got the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, we're not talking
Bobby
about it. How come we keep talking about it? I've just said 4 times we're not talking about it, Jimmy.
We're switching over to Cincinnati Bengals. We should take a poll here. Who's going to win, or who people want to win, right? But poor Bengals. So, well, what are we going to do here, Joe? Because Jay Anderson, I don't know. We may never get him back. He might have went into the deep, deep darkness. He might go audio. There he is. He's going to go audio only, I think.
That's right. All right, Jay. Good to see you, man. How you doing? There he is. Can you hear us, Jay? Can you hear us, Jay? There we go.
He's coming.
He's coming. We got him. How you doing, Jay?
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you. Thanks so much for sticking with us. We appreciate it. So thanks for popping in.
Yeah, you bet. I'm super excited when I saw the tweet that you two were going to show. I got my 2 books out from both of you. They're already signed by both of you. I mean, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to engage.
Right, you got that something to level every table in your house with those bad boys. That's what you got. That's all you got with that thing. Don't get them signed. They get devalue every time they get signed, just so you know.
That's right, buddy.
Thanks for coming in. Thanks so much for coming in and being part of the conversation.
Yeah, you betcha. Glad to be a part. Thanks for having me. And
so you had mentioned something in the comment that you wanted to talk about. So why don't you just go on with that, and then we'll kind of riff off of that piece of it. Go ahead.
Well, we talked about, and Jimmy gave a great keynote at the SAMS conference last Sunday, where it was bitterly cold and iguanas falling from trees and all that fun stuff. So, the principals that I help support they're struggling and they're hurting and they want to show how strong they are and they don't want to show some vulnerability, but exactly that's what they need to show right now is they need to show, hey, we're all human. We're all in this together. We're human. I'm human. You're human. And I get that. And I think that's important to show that. And it goes up to me and I see their stressors and I see their concerns that they have. And I just feel it's important to connect with them, not only during the week about the work, but also in honoring their time. They don't want to hear from me on their weekend, but sometimes I also feel I need to check on you on the weekend because I know you had a tough week. I know you take it home and they give the best of themselves at work and they leave the rest for their families and their other people in their lives. And I want to make sure that they're okay at home too. And having that whole personal life is so critical for them. And so I do step into their lane probably more than I should on the weekend, but I think they understand the why behind that. And it's out of love and out of concern. And I want them to know I see them and I value them as people first who happen to be excellent leaders in our system, modeling everything that we want them to do for our adults in our system, for our kids in our system. And they need to know that somebody cares about them outside of work. And so I kind of take that personal view that they're bigger people and they should be a person first because we hired them because of their greatness as a person. And we see them in that leadership role.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the things that's important about what you just said, though, Jay, is that you kind of defined what it was going to look like. Like you defined why you're contacting them outside of the regular school day and on the weekend. They're just checking out. Yeah. And I mean, there's a difference between checking out them and saying, hey, you also need to do this. Like there's there's the whole mentality of how can we make sure that we just are there to support in those times too. And it doesn't always need to be an initiative movement or anything like that. Sometimes it's just a conversation. And the more that we can do that, the more conversations we call them Seinfeld conversations here, right? Remember Seinfeld's the show about nothing. We have more conversations about nothing. So when we have to have a conversation about something, it doesn't feel as awkward or, that kind of thing. So how are we having these just general conversations, checking on people, making sure that they know and understand that we're invested in them? And that helps the process across the board.
Yeah, it really is just a text that I send them. Hey, I was thinking about you and I know you got this coming up with your family. I hope you have a great weekend and totally enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, I love that too. Just the modeling of that. Sometimes there's unintended positive consequences, or in this case, maybe result because of the modeling you're doing, right? And that just is, again, a reminder that when we look at our staff, and I feel like this is what you're doing, that staff member is like a student, right? It's like one of your students and you're checking in, taking a pulse, making sure they're doing okay. Just letting them know that you're there. And then it's modeling, because hopefully with that modeling, that's replicated then from teacher to student also when students are having bad days or a family's having a bad day. So yeah, I really like that. So thanks for sharing that. Hey, Jay, I'm going to ask you a question here. Maybe I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm looking at the comments here and I see a comment by Robert. Robert, thank you so much for sharing this. And he's absolutely right? This whole idea of, he says in here, even when we provide them the time, they want to use that time to do, and he puts in quotes, their work, not necessarily our work. And I do believe that that's a real feeling by a lot of people. So here's my question, Jay. How do we get past that everybody sees everything as our work, right? It's not their work, my work, your work. But it's really all of our work, right? We're all here for the same reason. I've always said, look, we're champion for all educators. I don't care what your role is, right? We always say this. You don't need a title. You don't need a parking spot. You don't need a nameplate. Hell, you don't even need a degree to lead, right? But how do we build this community of leaders where everybody understands, look, we're all responsible for the climate and culture of our buildings. We're all responsible for the teaching and learning in our organization. But I do believe Robert is right. There is still that mentality of ours and yours and my kids and your kids and our work and your work. And so do you have any thoughts on that you could share? So how do we just get that back to say we're all one community, that collective efficacy, that commitment?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking. And I think it stems from something you just said, is that it's first the recognition. Do we really believe that they're all our kids? Because if we don't start with that belief, then it's going to become, well, your kids leads to your work and my work, versus our kids leads to our work. And so I think it really starts with that core belief and why of our kids. If we really don't believe that all kids are our kids, then we start to separate those lanes, and those lanes become divisive into our purpose. And so I what are we doing as a staff when we come together, either the one-on-one interactions or the staff interactions together? What are we doing to celebrate? Hey, I noticed we are doing this for our kids, and highlighting those moments and make it the standard of what we do every day, versus, oh, that was awesome over there, and pointing out one hero or one fantastic person. What are we seeing in all of that, and showcasing that and sharing that narrative?
Yeah. Hey,
so
Jay,
one thing, go ahead.
Joe, just real quick while you're doing that, before you talk here, Amy, I'm going to ask Amy here, because Amy has been great. She is sharing a ton of ideas and thoughts and reflections in the chat box. So Amy, I'm going to ask if you'd be willing to join us here in a few minutes after Jay gets off, or in a couple minutes here, jump in and share some of your reflections from this morning, because I do think you're, making a lot of great points in the chat box this morning. So Amy, let us know if you'd like to jump in. We'll bring you in the background, and we'll finish up with Jay here. And if you're willing to jump in with us, we'd love to have you. Jay, go ahead, or Joe, go ahead. You were going to say something, buddy. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think we have to be careful, because there's our work, right? Like, if it all connects to ours, but there's also their work, right? Their work sometimes is planning for an English 10 day, right? I mean, that's their work. But the question becomes, how do we connect the our to their work? Because logistically, they still have stuff that they have to do that's really focused on what second grade needs at this time, or what eighth grade needs at this time, or what science needs at this time. That's their work in that spot. If we can connect it to what our vision or mission is moving forward, that's great. But we still have to make sure that we give them time to do their work, because that's important. I mean, that doesn't put them at ease if we're always trying to bring them together and team build. We got to figure out times that they can kind of divide and say, okay, so we're going to give you time to do this, but we're also going to get together to do so we have some collective, opportunity. If we can connect their work that they do in the classroom to our work as a group, it's a lot easier for them to know, kind of what that balance looks like, and to give it meaning. Because I think that's kind of what it comes down to. If they don't have meaning for either of them, then they're just going to kind of, end up in a silo. Everybody's talking about how we want to break down the silos in education, like all these silos that are happening all over the place, across the building. That's not going to happen tomorrow. But like Jay said, what if you just put like an extra door or a window on each silo so you can see what's going on next door, and you could actually talk about that stuff, right? So let's try to work within the system.
Yeah, Joe, I lied. I need to confess something. I lied. I said I had one thought that you shared, one idea that you shared. It's actually two now. It's two, Joe. Two. Yeah. You got two, buddy.
We should just cut this show off right now, man. Yes. That's as good as it's going to get.
I'm a little nervous to actually get to three by the end of the hour, Joe. But
let's not get crazy, too.
Hey, Joe, okay. So here's the parallel, right? The parallel is this. I agree with you, right? This idea is, well, they do have their work in this moment. This is what they need, what they're doing. But if it goes back again, the parallels of, well, it's the same thing from teacher to student, right? Mm-hmm. Teachers sometimes look at students, and students have needs right now. And sometimes we look at our own needs and it doesn't necessarily align. Well, I have needs right now too, but so does that student. And I think we could make the parallel between administrators and teachers and students. There will be moments that students need something right now. How do we provide that for them? But how do we make it so it aligns with our needs, so we see this as all as one? And I think we can make the comparison. We can do the same thing between administrators and teachers, because I'm a believer that for administrators, when we look at our staff, if we looked at them as our students, right, it's just like a classroom. How do we differentiate for our teachers, just like we expect our teachers to differentiate for our students? So that's a great point, Joe. So Jay Anderson, buddy, it is great to see you. I am so glad to connect with you again. Thank you. And always great to see you. And I'm so glad I ran into you at the SAM conference down in Florida last week, buddy. Yeah. Good luck as you move forward in your future endeavors. Okay?
Yeah, congratulations and good luck, Jay. We'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks so much, and I appreciate you're exactly right. We just need to honor each other. That's the best way that we do this work is see it, honor it, label it, and let people know the amazing things they're doing. So thanks again.
I love it.
All right,
I love it. Great job, Jay. Thanks, man.
Care,
have a good one. Take care.
Joe, I'm super excited about Amy because she's making all these great comments in the chat box. So hopefully she's going to join us here. I know I saw the link go out. I know she said she was willing to. So hopefully she jumps in here. And is she here? No, I'm looking there.
So here's the thing, while she's getting locked in, is that that is such a hard balance, I think, because when the state has initiatives, when the district has initiatives, when the country has initiatives that we have to move forward, how are we pulling people together and making it feel like it's not one more thing? I mean, there are days that I feel like, and I tell our group that I can't take anything off your plate. Like, that's not what I can do, but I can make that plate look a little bit more appetizing so it doesn't look like all the stuff is just piled on top of it. And if we can do that, maybe that's just what we have at a certain time. That's okay. That's okay. There's a lot of stuff on the plate. And if we can, as administrators, if we can help people and get some of that stuff off their plate, absolutely. But we also have to understand that if we take it off their plate, we're putting it on somebody else's plate, right? So if we say, like, administrators take stuff off of the plates of the teachers, that's great. But at the same time, that's going to put it on the plates of the administrators too. And when are they going to get burned out, right? So how are we? There's got to be balance along with it. And if we can do that, then I think we're going to be in a good spot.
Joe, I heard you, but every time you kept saying plate, I'm going to be honest, I just kept thinking about food.
Of course you did.
Talking about food.
I think that everybody in this place needs to know that if you ever get a chance to have lunch, dinner with Jimmy, you'll never get your full meal. I have known him for 9 years. And in 9 years, I have not eaten a full meal with Jimmy Costas. All of a sudden I'm eating, and then I see an arm come over and I'm like, what are you doing? Well, I just want to try that. That's not something that people should do, Jimmy. You don't just say, well, I just want to try that, and then take somebody's food. But it happens all the time, Jimmy. So I need that to be, that needs to be done. We're not going to do it. I'm going to start eating on the other side of the table. You'll probably get up and just walk across at that point.
That's right.
It's ridiculous.
Well, Amy, we hope you can still join us. I know you said you were willing to join us. I know the link was out there. We'll maybe put the link in there one more time in case you're looking for that link. Hopefully you can jump in and join us here because we really would love to hear your thoughts and reflections this morning. So,
Joe, can I ask you a question? I'm going to ask you a question,
absolutely,
Jimmy, about just the idea that, if we're talking about what we can do to help people, and we obviously got here somehow, right? Like somebody gave us the opportunity to lead. We emulated some of the work, we modeled some of the work that we've seen in the past. And I think about what those qualities are that the best leaders that led us, that we're trying to, make sure that we get out to the people that we serve. What are some of the best characteristics of leaders that you've worked with, that you've learned from? What are those characteristics that you want to make sure that you push out to the people that you lead?
Yeah. I immediately have to go out and, the first thought comes to my assistant principal, Kelly Morgan, when I was in high school. Number one, just the amount of time that he invested in me, Joe. And I got to tell you, there were times I didn't deserve that. I mean, it was not good sometimes. I mean, when you're a young man and, and lost your way and just behaving in ways that are not appropriate. But there's an example. I think my first leadership lesson from school anyway came from him. And that was, bottom line is, he just never quit on me. And I gave him every reason to quit on me, Joe. And for those of you in the audience who may not know this, I was actually expelled in my senior year of high school. And I don't think I ever would have made it back to school had he not come to my house, right, and helped my parents navigate a system that they didn't understand, right? They just didn't understand that system. And so I always give kudos out to Kelly Morgan, who's retired now, and still consider him one of my best friends. And that's pretty cool too, right? I still tell people all the time, it's like, when I became a principal at 26, he was the second call I made after my parents. And I said, hey, Kelly, we're going to be colleagues. And he's like, I can hear the silence, right? And all of a sudden I hear oh, crap, right? But it wasn't crap. He said, oh, S, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And it was like, he's like, this guy who got expelled and we're now colleagues, right? It's just crazy, right? But it's just a reminder. And when I think about our kids today, this is why we should never label kids. We have no idea where they're going to end up. And I don't want anybody to look at me as a 17-year-old or as a 26-year-old or even as a 40-year-old and say, what, would you expect to see the same person when you haven't seen me for 10, 20, 15, 20 years? No. this is, we're all evolving and we're all growing, especially in leadership, right? We're never going to get there. It's the way we grow and develop as leaders is, I think, the best modeling that we can take away from those who have inspired us. And then the last person I would say is just Dan Donder, who was really the first person who gave me opportunity and believed in me. And he was just an amazing leader and just taught me just how to lead from a heart, right? From that heart.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never met a guy who just cared so much about people in his role. So anyway, felt blessed about that, but I'm going to stop talking because Amy,
I hope so.
You are in.
Hi, Amy. Thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. How you doing?
Hey, I'm not going to say it's better than church, but it is a Sunday morning.
There you go, Amy. Amy,
Right, well,
I loved all the comments you're sharing in there. So thank you. So you can just talk about what you want to talk about. We're going to turn it over to you. Just your reflections this morning. And I saw your comments in there. So thanks for sharing. And by the way, every now and then, Joe would just throw a little subliminal message in there. So you got to pay really close attention.
Okay.
She'll say like, no kidding. Stop talking, Jimmy.
That's not working for him right now. I want to tell everybody that I don't see Jimmy as a 17-year-old or a 40-year-old. I see him at what he truly is. He's 65, which is fantastic. So I'm glad that he's here and he's able to take some time away. It's good. And we got it before it's 4 o'clock, Wheel of Fortune show. It's good to be here. So Amy, thanks so much for being here and having a conversation. As you commented and some of the great ideas you had, what kind of things are you reflecting on this morning as we're kind of going through the process?
Well, I'm reflecting on a lot of things, but I think systemically, our system isn't built to support the demands that are required in a pandemic. But the other thing, based on my personal experiences, is to assume that everybody wants to be a leader is a big mistake.
No.
I've had the experience where someone thought they wanted to be a leader. So I created that opportunity, gave them the resources, modeled, facilitated. And then a year later, they were like, no, thank you. That's not for me. But it was so helpful because then they were able to really focus on their passion and where their strengths lied. So I don't like to assume that anybody wants to be a leader because not everybody can be a leader, because then you have the opposite end of the spectrum of those that want to be leaders that just don't have the innate capability. So you've got to find ways for them to lead, right? And find places for them to lead and facilitate that. But what I really hang my hat on, gentlemen, is their kids or our kids.
Yeah.
As a director of special programs, it just goes all over me. And I had to retrain myself from the very beginning of my 29 years, not to say my kids, because, that's so endearing. And no, that's not okay. So that's probably one of the things I battle the most is that there are kids and they're not special ed students. They're students with special needs. They're students first, but I'm not going to get on that high horse because we're talking about leadership. But I really believe that you have to connect with people to know where they can be a leader, and don't assume that they want to be a leader. Some people just want to be in charge.
Yeah,
some people just want to be a boss, and that we don't need any more of those. Really.
Well, here's something that's really interesting that you say that it absolutely resonates with me. And then I truly believe that everybody can lead. The question becomes, is the position ready for them, or is that what we're really talking about? Because if it's a position that assumes that that's the leader of that space, that might not be what they want. At the same time, they still lead in their classroom. They still lead wherever. I had a teacher a couple years ago that he's a fantastic teacher, like an absolute fantastic teacher. And I had this conversation with him. I said, you really think about going into administration. I think you'd be a fantastic leader for a building. I think you'd be great. And we talked about it for a second, and that was about it. And then we took off. And then he actually stopped me the next day. And I was in his classroom, and he said, what you said yesterday really, really hurt my feelings. Like it just kind of knocked me. It did, because he's like, I love what I do. And your assumption is that I need to do something different. And then I started thinking that I needed to do something different. I made an assumption about him. And that wasn't fair to me. He's a fantastic teacher. He's going to be a fantastic teacher every day for the rest of his career. And he's going to inspire kids. He's going to lead kids. And that's where I should support, not thinking that he should be doing something else. And this is what you're talking about, the ability to lead and the opportunity to lead. We all have that, but sometimes it's about fit too. And what we can make sure that happens with the fit.
Well, and let's be honest, lead is a 4-letter word.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes, yeah.
I mean, it comes with its own pressures, a lot of which people don't recognize. Like you were talking about, Jimmy, when I became a principal, it changed who I was. I could not stay ahead of the 8 ball. And it was so taxing emotionally and physically and mentally. So you have to, and you don't know that till you get in it, right? That's what they
Mhm.
tell us. You don't know what it's like till you do it.
Yeah.
Well, they can know more of what it's like if we model it honestly. And one of my big deals is I intentionally communicate. Like I mentioned in my comments, I tell my staff, don't think I'm ignoring you on the weekends. I'm modeling self-care.
Right.
So
There you
if there's
go.
urgency, I'll reply. If not, slow your roll and have a great weekend.
Yeah.
I agree.
And
Totally
Amy, I
agree.
think the clarity of that, right? I mean, there it goes back. You explain to them why, right? Why you're not reaching out, right? Don't give them the opportunity to start making up reasons why you're not, right? So that
Exactly.
communication is clarity was critical. But Joe, there's a leadership lesson in there. Again, Joe, number 3 for you here, buddy, this morning. Good job. Keep it rolling. But I'm going to go back to the story because that's a great story, right? And that happens all the time. And I think the takeaway for all of us is we do make assumptions that people who are effective at what they do are on their way to something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the leadership lesson for all of us, or the reminder anyway, is that we should always start with a question. Hey, so talk to me a little bit, man. Just admire the way the way you teach, the impact you make, the relationships with kids. Talk to me a little bit about where did you learn that, and where do you go from here? Or is this where you always want to be, right? You just ask the question, and then he says, Joe, I don't ever see myself anywhere else. And then we never have to go that route, right? So, but again, I don't think there's anything wrong in terms of how we communicate it to. I do believe it's cool that you see in people another potential, another avenue, because we have also heard the story go the other way. I never even thought about being a leader until my leader came to me and said, you ever thought about being a leader, right? That type of thing. So I think that's why it's always hard, because everybody just comes at it from a different place. But anyway.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Amy. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks
we appreciate it. Oh my goodness. It was great to have you. Your comments were fantastic. Thanks for being part of the show.
And
thanks,
Amy,
guys.
where are you from? Because I love the accent. Where are you from?
Central Texas.
There you go. Central Texas. So,
Born and raised in Waco, but don't be jealous.
Amy, who has the best food in the country? Who has the best food?
Texas.
There you go.
We do.
Listen, we got 3 bars, we got 2 gas stations, we got 1 school in Fall Creek, Wisconsin. Let's talk. We'll have to talk about it.
Okay.
Bye,
guys.
Bye-bye,
guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye. You know what, Jimmy, Jennifer asked a really fantastic question, and I want to make sure that
I saw it too. I saw the same thing. Exactly.
It's a great question.
On the screen right now, right?
Yeah. Yes, that's the one. There it is, right there. And I think it's a really good question that I think that we're all struggling with right now. And that is that, if we're trying to help people not burn out in the future, there's some things we can put into place. But what if we are? What if we are? What if we already are? And I think the one thing that I think about when it comes back to this process is, do you know your people well enough to ask the question about, are they burned out and what do they need? And B, are you willing to do something about that? Right. So I think the first thing that we need to understand is, are we helping our leaders do that? Like, as the leader of the people that we lead, we need to make sure we ask those 2 questions. But what if we're burned out? What are we going to do to figure it out? And honestly, I'm just going to be really clear. I get burned out because of tasks, not because of why we do the task, right? So the biggest thing for me when I'm burned out is getting back to why we do what we do, but not philosophically why we do. Like, I get into a classroom and I connect with a kid, I talk to a teacher, I make sure that we're in that spot that I can see some joy. And one of the things that we talk to groups a lot is the idea that if you put yourself in the right mindset to see great things, you're going to see great things. So what do we talk about recognize, acknowledge, extend, and we can talk about that later, but think about the way that you start your day, right? Like, what are the first 5 things that you do when you get to school every day? And if the first 5 things that you do when you get to school every day are answer emails, sign forms, that kind of stuff, like, you're already going to be in the wrong mindset to see great things when you get out to connect with kids. So set yourself up. I don't care what it is that you do to get yourself ready for the day. If it's meditation, if it's yoga, if it's breakfast, if it's walking, if it's running, don't be running. That's ridiculous. But if it's any of those other things, like, do whatever it is that you do to put yourself in the right mindset, and then actively seek out what that really looks like in your space. Because otherwise we get bogged down with the minutia of the day. And then you're kind of stuck, like, oh my goodness, it's 9 o'clock. I haven't seen a kid all day, or I haven't seen a person all day because you got to do all these other things. So what are you doing to start your day? If you're already burned out, think about why you do what you do. What's the best part of your job, and how early in the day can you get to the best part in your job?
Joe, that's lots of great nuggets there. Thank you for sharing that, buddy. As always, I think you're spot on, especially how you start your day, right? So Jennifer Bloom, who I consider a really good friend of mine, I'm just going to share something a little personal here about her. And I know most people are not in this situation, but Jennifer is in this situation, and so is her husband, Travis. So Jen, here's a personal message to you, my friend, because I love you dearly. I think one of the things you and Travis can think about, because I don't know, but one thing I would examine is how often are you and Travis talking about work at home? Because if the two of you go to school all day and all you do is work, and then you go home and talk about work, that could be potentially leading to that because you never get away from that. Again, I have no idea what that looks like, but it's always a caution for any family who has two educators in a family, correct? It could be administrator, teacher, doesn't really make a difference. So that's one thing I would say to Jen. The second thing I would say is this, is I still think we always have to go back and find what is the joy in the work that we do, right? Joe, you're kind of alluding to that. Maybe it's even going back and sitting down, just like we set goals. Maybe it's a simple T-chart. What are the things that I do that exhaust me, that I don't get any joy out of? What are the things that I do that do bring me joy? Because at the end of the day, I do kind of believe it kind of goes back to a little bit of, okay, I can't wait for people to come fill my cup. I just can't. So what can I do differently to go find the joy in the work? And I think the joy in the work for many of us who went in this profession is because we want to make a difference. We want to build relationships. We want to make an impact. We want to make these connections with people. We want to inspire people. So it kind of ties in with Joe, and then get out in the building and connect with kids and connect with teachers, listen to their stories, offer, listen, but then also validate. Don't necessarily try to fix everything, but yet, because again, we don't want to flip this around and give you more work to do. Sometimes it just means, so a perfect example is I was walking through a building with an administrator who kept saying, what can I do to help you? What can I do to help you? What can I do to help you?
Yeah.
What do you need from me? And I said, maybe just reframe that a little bit and just say, what is it you need right now? Because it may not necessarily have to come from you. It doesn't have to mean you have to come in. And I know that's another mistake I made early on in my career. And I'll just be honest, it was a little bit of a hero mentality. It was an ego that caught me. I wanted to fix everything. I wanted to solve everything. But we can't sustain that. And I don't think we can. So I think we reframe it. We look at it differently and say, look, I'm not going to try to fix everything or solve everything. What I am going to do, though, is try to reflect on the way that I manage those situations. And if I can manage them differently, then maybe I'll get a better result. And therefore, I don't have to put so much pressure on myself to fix everything and solve everything. It's really about reflection and changing the way we behave so we can bring a better version of ourselves to school every day. And if we do that, I think we inspire other people to become better versions of themselves. And I think Jenny Bloom does that. I know she's done it for me. I know her husband, Travis, does it the same way. And I can honestly pretty much say that about probably every administrator I've ever known, because I think we go in to make an impact, to make a difference. But the job, people, is exhausting, and we know that. So we have to stay ahead of it. So find the joy in every day. And I believe it goes back to connections, relationships.
I couldn't agree more. I think I want to be real careful about this, though, Jimmy, because the minute that we start talking about finding joy in the work, we start talking about what our joy is in the work and not their joy. Remember, we have to remember that it's their journey, not ours. So whatever it is that you do to find you joy, that might be connecting with your small group team, the adults in the room. That might be hanging out at the buses. It doesn't, whatever it is for you, but know yourself well enough to know what brings you joy. I mean, we all have, I shouldn't say that like this. A lot of us have checklists. A lot of us are checklist people. We have stuff on a checklist and we check it off as we go along because it got done, right? Right. And there are two types of checklist people in the world. There are checklist people that write stuff down, check it off as they go along on a list. Then there's checklist people like me that write stuff down on a list, check it off as I go. But if I do something that's not on a list, I'm going to write on a list, check it off because I should get credit for that. So here's the thing about checklist mentality, though, you have to understand is that there's not a lot of stuff on that checklist that's like, did you smile today? Right? Did you make a connection with a kid? It's like, did you get the report done? So think about, there's the list. And I think, well, who just said it? Sue just said it. Like, instead of the to-do list, to-be list. That's a great point, Sue. That's a fantastic point, because how can we put ourselves in a position? And it starts with knowing what brings us joy. I can't make the assumption that you being in a kindergarten classroom brings you joy. I know it does. If I go to a 4K class, if I go to a 4-year-old kindergarten class, I'm going to smile walking out, but that's me. It could be a high school English class for somebody else. It could be the bus garage for somebody else. It could be talking to custodians for somebody else. It could be talking to your administrative team. But know yourself well enough to know what brings you joy and get to that as early as you can in the day.
Joe Sanfilippo, I cannot believe we are 4 minutes away from the end of the hour already. This has been awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just honored to be a part of this with you. I am excited about the people that joined us this morning. I am going to ask the people that joined us this morning, first of all, thank you so much. We hope you'll join us again next week. We don't really have a time established. We know it'll always be the weekly show. We're just not quite sure what time it'll be. It's really based on Joe and my schedule. But having said that, we do hope that you'll share this with your friends, with your audience, that you'll invite people to come join us. We're super grateful. Thank you again, Jay. Thank you again, Amy. And thank you again, Jen, and everybody else who made comments today and helping us and supporting us in the work that we're trying to do. Again, just trying to talk about different ways to impact our buildings, because we do believe it's always about leadership. So God bless you for the work you do each and every day. We're praying for you. Hang in there. And Joe Sanfilippo, I'll let you close it. And we'll see you all next week, people. We love you, and thank you so much for being here today. Joe.
I got nothing else, man. It was a great time. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can, and we're looking forward to doing this again. So have a great week, everybody. Go Crickets.
All right, thank you. Check out the recording if you want to go back and look at it again, okay?